Hey, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. We have more for our book that has come out, Mission Hope, Thriving Through Seasons of the Soul. And Susan is here today, and she's going to talk about her chapter in the book. And we're so excited to have the authors coming on. Many of the authors from the book have come on to record episodes around their chapter, and Susan's here to talk about hers. Here's a little bit from the upcoming chat we have here on the podcast. Here's Susan talking about what it means to be part of this book. Here's Susan.
Yeah, it's really an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to share positive messages with others and to let people know they're not alone. You know, when you're facing tough times, look around. There are people that will help you. And it can be hard to have that voice again when you're having a hard time. And if you've never had to depend on anyone and you have to ask for help, it's not easy. So I think that this book will really let people know that, you know, they're not alone. There are people that have gone through things. They might not always talk about it, but, you know, they're there. So it's a beautiful thing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We are here again talking to another awesome and amazing author, part of the Mission Hope book, 18 amazing stories, all in one book, and we're all themed around hope. And today's author is joining me as well. Susan, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter, and congratulations about being part of this amazing book.
Thank you so much. It's exciting. It's my first time being an author, so I have all these, you know, wonderful feelings of like, oh my gosh, I did it.
It's got to be nice, and I can see it there on your desk behind you as we're recording, which is amazing. It's so cool to actually see the book on someone's desk now as we're talking. So we've been talking about this for a little while, and it's there. It's exciting. Congratulations! It's really, really great to have time with you today. Tell me how this all started for you, that you found your way into this book.
So I've been writing on LinkedIn since 2019, and I met Dominic, I believe it was the beginning of 2022. It was through connections on LinkedIn. And, you know, he and I talked about, you know, maybe potentially someday doing something. And he was so kind, and he's like, you know, I'm not going to pressure you. You do it on your time. So I was still contemplating when that would be. And I had met Shar on LinkedIn as well, probably more like in 2020. And she and I had been working together in the breast cancer community. And she said, Susan, I would love for you to deliver, you know, a story of hope in this book. Would you be part of this anthology? And you know, I've known Shar for a long time in this new world. And I thought, well, if Shar's doing it, then I'm going to take a chance. And maybe now is the time to unleash and start actually doing a chapter of my own.
Nice. And we both have, yeah. So I've had many conversations with Shar. Dominic, I met on Clubhouse, that social audio app. And this podcast is actually, it's all Dominic's fault, because he wanted a podcast for his authors to come on, and he liked some of my other podcasts that I was doing, and he said, Dave, you need to create one for authors, and I'm going to send you authors to come on your show. So the fact that you and I are talking is all Dominic's fault. So I love this. This is great. And I love that you have a connection with him as well. He's a super nice guy. Shar is inspiration in a bottle. I have no idea. Just talking to her, she's just amazing. And I've had the chance to talk to the other authors in the book, and they echo the same sentiments that you have been sharing as well. So from your perspective, being part of this book, what does this really mean for you? Again, it's right there beside you. What does this mean for you to capture your words and be a part of this project and know that there's your voice included in this book? How does it feel for you?
It feels amazing, because I think that I've had a lot of experiences that other people would resonate with, you know, everyday experiences and big experiences and small ones too. But to be able to speak to them in a way and deliver hope. I'm a very values-based person, and to be able to help people to get in touch with their values and realize that they can be seen, heard, and understood by others by speaking out. And, a book is a great way to do it, especially when there's so many other people sharing intimate stories.
Right. You feels like a safe place is what I heard some of the authors say, to get out there and share their message in
it
this format.
does. Yeah, it's scary the first time, I will admit.
Right. Yeah. You're like, oh, wow, I'm actually going to say the thing and do the thing. And my family's going to read it, or my friends, and it's great to kind of have that safe spot where you're not writing the entire book. You're part of the chapters, and you can, right?
Right. It's a good low risk entry point.
Yeah.
It's one chapter. Surely you can do one chapter.
There you go. Right. So maybe this opens the door to have that conversation with Dominic now that you have one chapter done. What do you think?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps. Dominic might have had me ask that question, just so you know. That's amazing. Okay. So can you give us a little bit of insight on your portion of this book, behind the scenes of your chapter? What would you say to a reader when they come to your chapter in the book? What do you want them to know before they read your very first entry in that chapter?
What would I want them to know? This chapter is really how my mantra was formed. And my mantra is know your value, live your values. And I really hope that when somebody reads my chapter, they feel more of a sense of own personal value and realize how important it is to live in alignment with their own values.
Well,
and that's whether you're working with friends, anywhere, school, in a community organization,
right.
If that's out of alignment, that's where a lot of pain and suffering comes in. And I hope that by sharing my message, it will help others.
So how do you live this mantra yourself? Can you kind of walk us through that? Because that's going to be the title of this episode right there. I love that. How do you live this every day? It's one thing to have a mantra. It's another thing to live your words. Yeah.
To know your value, it gets chipped away over life sometimes, right? And that's why I named my LLC Pieces of I. It's both positive. It's got positives and negatives, right? You get chipped away over time, but then new things come into your life. So you get new pieces. So you may lose some pieces, but you also gain some pieces, new people, new places, new experiences. So Pieces of I was really intended to be that the collective we of things. But how I live it is recognizing that, every single person matters. And I don't view one person as better than another. I value each person for who they actually are, not titles, not where they live, not how much money they make, but who are they actually inside? And so I have to look in the mirror and do that with myself, which is hard to do. Over time, you chip away, right? And so I was lifting up person after person, but then I would cut myself down. And I learned now that, no, you've got to practice what you preach. You got to practice self-compassion and self-love. And that's the way you heal. And when you live in your values, when you live your values, and you know that what's foundational for you, and for me, it's respect, authenticity, and compassion. And so I know that has to be present. And when it's present, I'm happy. And when it's not present, I can now see where the conflict comes. You can't be with somebody who, if you believe in integrity and they ask you to lie, that's not living in your values. And so, now I do a lot of company culture things, because a lot of companies have a list on the wall, like, these are our values. Yeah. And I say, do you live your values?
Right.
Because who you hire, how you hire, do you live the words that your employees can believe? Because if there's not an alignment there, it's going to cause conflict. And there's ways to change that.
So before we hit record, we were chatting a little bit about your backstory. And there was a point in your career where you took a break and there was a situation that caused that break. Can we talk a little bit about that portion of your story? Because I think that kind of feeds into our conversation as well.
Yeah, sure. That's great. Yeah, so it takes really big things to move me, apparently. So,
Yeah.
so I was doing really fantastic in my career. I was working in corporate, and I had just returned after having my fourth child, and they were being so accommodating and wonderful with me. They're like, I had a hybrid schedule before it was a thing back in 2001.
Mm.
And then September 11th happened. And I'm driving into work and I get the call. I have three of my children in the car. My husband had taken my oldest to kindergarten. And my husband called me and said, turn on the radio. Something big's happened. So when you drive in and you realize you don't know what's happening, the world is no longer what it was before you left the house. It made me question, why am I here? Like, should I just be home with my kids for a while? I stood in the daycare, which was on the first floor of the building, and I wondered, is a car going to come crashing through the window? Like, how can I leave the daycare not knowing if planes are flying into buildings? Right. Could a car come crashing through this window? So it really, really shook me, and it made me wonder, like, I pour everything into everything I do, and I decided I was going to do that with my family now. And so I took that career break, but it's a scary thing when you're independent feeling, and then you take a career break and you are depending on somebody else. It's tough. And then the way back to work is tough because the corporate world doesn't necessarily look at people who volunteer and do all of those things at home the same way they do at somebody with a pure corporate career. So I had a great experience. I don't regret anything. I loved staying home. I ran many projects. I grew my skills, but the return back to the work world was not necessarily easy.
And so I guess that's the one thing. I think that in a career break, some people might see that as, that you're not contributing or you're not part of the team or, I would never think of it as a weakness. I would see it as an advantage in the sense that you are out doing things and, like you said, becoming, like, bettering yourself and learning new skills and applying these things. And, and you recognize what you needed in the moment and you put your family first. And I can't, I have a hard time thinking that that could ever be something negative, right? That should be something positive that in this moment, I need to focus on my family. That should be celebrated.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
And the women I was working with, they're mostly women that I was working with when my kids were younger. I mean, I was working with PhDs and, women scientists and lawyers. And, there was a lot of women who took career breaks to make sure that their kids had everything that they needed and wanted. And not everybody can. And so I recognized that, it was a privilege to be able to take that break.
Yeah.
But, I got to learn the volunteer world. You have to incentivize differently. You're not paying anyone. So you have to learn how to motivate and you still have to be organized and you still have to create spreadsheets. And of course I create everything's on a spreadsheet. My kids joked about that in grade school. Mom, why is everything on a spreadsheet? I'm like, because it should be.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. That could be a mantra as well. Everything should be on a spreadsheet. Yeah. So did you find your way back to your career the way it was, or were things completely different from that point on for you?
Oh, it was completely different. When I finally decided to start, going back, which after about 10 years of being home, I started trickling my way back into the work world. And the first time you're filling out, sending in your resume and then they don't even, it wasn't even looked at. You don't even get a response. And it's like, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah.
And then even the jobs that I did get, I worked with a lot of nice people, but they were not at the same pay rate and not at the same level. And it was like earning your way back. It took a long time to earn myself back. But in the process, it's a really, I say in the book, it was a very degrading process when you know your skills,
right,
and you know your experience,
yeah,
and you know that you were doing really well before you left, and then you go in for an interview, and they're asking you to like do a practice phone call, and you're like, are you kidding? I used to run $3.5 billion contracts before. Okay.
yeah,
It's just not necessarily an easy road back. And I'd love for that to change. I
yeah,
would love for the volunteer work and the, community work that people do to be recognized as skills, because they
nice,
are skills.
yes,
And for women to be treated, it's more women than men that typically take a career break, but I would like to see them treated with respect when they come back. And I think it's happening in some places, but there's work to be done.
yeah. That career break doesn't mean that someone has gone backwards in their skill set. We need to think of it more as they've gone forward in their skill set. I'm back here and I have more to offer than when I was here last time, because I've
Yes,
lived something different and now I can contribute in this way. That's how it should be.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so being a part of a book like this, again, it's great that you have been willing and open to be a part of this. I love it. And I've asked all the authors this, and this isn't a surprise question for you, but is there something that you'd like to say directly to Shar and Dominic in this situation, with knowing both of them, about being part of this book, what it means to you, and any message to them? Because I know they're going to listen to this in celebration of the book. It's a little bit of a surprise for the two of them to hear words coming from the authors about what this book means to them and their friendship. Is there anything you'd like to share with Dominic and Shar in this podcast?
Yes, I would, of course. Dominic and Shar, thank you so much for believing in me and asking me to be part of this, and for your kindness and compassion, which means so much to me. I have gotten to know Shar quite a bit over the past 3 years, and I have so much respect for her own fight back with after having breast cancer 4 times. And I work at a breast cancer nonprofit as well. And I know how passionate and amazing she is. I called her a mighty warrior back in 2020 because she is. She's an amazing woman who has really overcome so much. And for her to give me this opportunity has been really appreciated. And Dominic, not pressuring and just being the kind, fun self that he is. It's a great team to work with. So I'm so thankful for both of them.
It feels like this book is a gift to the authors to be a part of it. It's like a present that they're giving to you, right?
Yeah, it's really an opportunity,
Sure.
and it's an opportunity to share positive messages with others and to let people know they're not alone. When you're facing tough times, look around. There are people that will help you. And it can be hard to have that voice again when you're having a hard time. And if you've never had to depend on anyone and you have to ask for help, it's not easy. So I think that this book will really let people know that, they're not alone. There are people that have gone through things. They might not always talk about it, but, they're there. So it's a beautiful thing.
Susan, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about LinkedIn, and that's a place where you live and reside, and that's been one of your powerhouse communities that you have. For somebody new to LinkedIn, is there any advice that you have for somebody coming to the platform and on how to build community on LinkedIn?
I would say be authentic. People can read right through the nonsense.
Right.
when I got started on LinkedIn, it was in 2019. And when I started writing, I felt inspired to write. And when I started writing from the heart, that's where my community came from. If you want to build your community, be you. And be you in your message. And don't be afraid. The right people will come.
Right.
I speak every week I'm talking across 6 continents now in my messaging.
Wow.
And so it might not even be the person next door. It might be the person, thousands and thousands of miles away who resonates and understands. And it's, I'm just so inspired by it. I work closely with an artist in South Africa, and that has been amazing. She saw my poetry. I saw her art. We started combining efforts just organically.
Wow.
There was, so there's a lot of possibility, when you're yourself, be who you are.
And that stands out because a lot of people are trying to be someone else in life. So if you can be yourself, you're the only you in the world. So,
and if you're not liked for you, then, there's a time when you got to go, well, I don't want to be liked for what I'm pretending to be. I want to be liked for who I am. And if I'm not liked, that's okay. It is okay. We're not all meant to be, I guess, even close with one. It's like you have a tribe. They will come.
Yeah.
It's really amazing to see. I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform. People are really special there.
Good. And then people listening to this podcast can reach out and follow and be a part of your community as well on LinkedIn?
Yes. Yeah. Susan LePlae Miller.
Okay. We'll make sure we have a link to that in the show notes. The one other thing I'd be remiss to not ask is your charitable work that you're working with. And is there anything that you'd like to talk about and give some attention to here in the podcast that we can point people in that direction as well and encourage those charitable organizations that you're a part of?
Absolutely. That'd be fantastic. So yeah, I have my LLC, which I do cultures and values work. And then I'm also vice president of programs and partnerships for My Density Matters, which is a breast cancer nonprofit focused on breast density as a risk factor for breast cancer. Okay. And it also hides your breast cancer on a mammogram. So that is a very important cause to me. I do not have breast cancer. I have a lot of friends who have breast cancer. And the founder of My Density Matters, Leslie, her breast cancer was found at stage 4, wow, 2 months after an all-clear mammogram. Wow. And that is why she started My Density Matters. And she contacted me in April of 2020, right after the pandemic, and shared her story with me. And that's part of what's in the book, is because she shared her story. We both believed in empowerment. And I said, well, why don't I see what I can do to help you? We worked on her mission, her vision, her values. And then she turned it in, we turned it into a nonprofit together, but it's her nonprofit. And I'm so proud of her and for the team that works so hard to save lives through early diagnosis. And that's, meeting Shar through this whole thing too. She did a video amazing for us recently, and amazing. It was like, she's a rock star.
And so people can go to the website for the charity as well, make donations, support. That's all available through the website as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can either find it through my Pieces of Eye website. I have a link. It's Empower Your Breast Health, or you can go directly to the My Density Matters website.
See, that's huge to have that part of the podcast and point people in that direction. People are listening around the world, and you can make a difference no matter where you are. And you can be a part of the solution, which we talk about. Susan, you're part of the solution. And I love that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being part of this book, being a part of 18 amazing authors and under Char's leadership and with Dominic's assistance. I'm really anticipating that this book's really going to speak to many people.
Oh, I believe so. The messages in there are just so inspiring, and it's really an honor and a privilege to have my own story in with all of these other amazing authors, and for Char to trust me as one of the contributing authors as well.
It's great when people share their story. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah,
and being part of our little podcast as well. Everyone, please go to the website. All the links are in the show notes. You want to connect with Susan. And again, I would really ask people to find a way to support this charity by donating. And let's help many, many people.
Yeah, let's save lives together. Right. Thank you.
Something we can all do. So Susan, thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thank you again. Take care.
Hey, thanks for being here for the podcast. Mission Hope, Thriving Through Seasons of the Soul, came out March 24th, 2023. 18 amazing authors, all corralled by the amazing Shar Murphy. If you need some inspiration in your life, please go to the show notes, follow the links, go purchase the book, gift it to someone, buy copies and leave it in your waiting rooms of businesses or a dentist office. Just go out and buy the book and support these great authors, many first-time authors, first-time podcast guests. A lot of firsts happening here. Shar Murphy, thank you. Dominic Damaski, publisher as well from Motivation Champs. Thank you so much for bringing together these amazing people and to have these authors on a podcast here to talk about their chapters is so great. So encouraging you, go out, check out Mission Hope, Thriving Through Seasons of the Soul. Get your copy today. Thanks for being part of the podcast. Catch you on the next one.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.